End of the day, skills has to result in economic opportunities or jobs. It's not skills that fill the stomach, it's jobs that fill the stomach. So I think if you reframe it as jobs, because what you've done with skills is we just tick marked and say you have the skills. People have the skills, but where are the jobs? The entrepreneurial opportunity lies in doing two things. One is to figure the dots out. I think the more critical skill is to connect the dots in a way that makes sense for you. The critical skill is what is the picture you want to paint on a canvas. If talent is so widespread, why is still there poverty where people say I don't have jobs?
10 years back, when the current government started to give LPG cylinders to everyone, I think that was an aspiration to many people in rural because you were getting out of your wood and charcoal.
Correct.
But then people said, I got a cylinder, now where is the free refill? and now people say, that's all done. Now what else?
What next?
So power, and now power means 24 hours power, and then 16 hours is not good enough.
Every conversation that I've having is somewhere seems to put AI at the center and people around it. And therefore we are saying, what can people do for AI? And I realize that is the wrong way to look at it, right? You got to put people at the center and put AI around to say, how can AI enable people to find jobs, to improve lives, livelihoods, or whatever?
The data that is used to train AI. Most of this data tends to come from the West, from the English language. A lot of indigenous wisdom gets lost in the process. 100%. The other day, I was looking up something on Siddha medicine, which is very unique to South India. Their wisdom is locked up in small towns. It is not in English. And if you go to ChatGPT, ask a question around some thing, you will get distorted answers.
India's employment challenges cannot be solved by these giga factories or large employers because they'll continue to become more efficient. Hopefully, they'll require fewer and fewer people to generate higher economic output. But I think the real game is about creating millions of small and micro entrepreneurs. Even if each entrepreneur creates 5, 10, 15, 20 jobs, I think that is the solution to creating 150 million people to live with dignity.
How many times have any one of us gone and told an Accenture or an IBM, I'm looking for a livelihood, right? We're looking for careers. We want the dignity. That why should we say, listen, for you, sustenance is good enough, right? But for us, hey, we're looking for careers. We're looking for growth. We're looking for that bungalow, car, whatever.
So here is another episode of Clearing the Blur with Madan. Madan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Delighted
Madan.
to be here. Thanks, Rajiv, Deepak.
Yeah, and before we start our topical discussion, we have a ritual out here.
Okay.
We start with a rapid fire.
Okay.
And here is the rapid fire round for you. The most expensive myth India believes about employability.
It's probably employability itself.
Wow.
What I mean by that is, I don't think there's anything called as employability. In my view, everybody is employable. You got to find the right fit.
Whether your skills are of value for someone.
Exactly. And there is always that value. Discoverability is the challenge.
Okay, it's a powerful idea. One belief about rural India that you think is completely outdated.
You always hear any story starting off as once in a poor village. I don't think villages are poor. Not by the classic definition of poverty, and maybe there is no single definition of poverty itself. I think there's so much of richness there. So we should stop calling them as poor villages.
Okay, so that's the abundance mindset that you're talking about. Yes, absolutely.
And the most underappreciated job creator in rural India?
I think the small businesses that you see all around the place, right? You walk out of this bustling, into a bustling neighborhood in Indranagar, you will see so much of economic activity, right? We don't look at them as entrepreneurs.
Exactly, in rural India too, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. I think people are finding their own ways to earn their livelihood.
Yes.
They're all entrepreneurs in their own small way.
Exactly.
Right.
And one word you would ban from India's killing vocabulary?
Maybe skills.
Skills. Please explain.
What I mean by that is, end of the day, skills has to result in economic opportunities or jobs. It's not skills that fill the stomach, it's jobs that fill the stomach. So I think if you reframe it as, jobs, because what you've done with skills is we just tick marked and say you have the skills.
Yeah.
People have the skills, but where are the jobs?
Right.
Right? And skills, to me, if I'm hungry, are useless if it does not fill my stomach.
Right.
So maybe the reframing should be that there's no skilling industry, it's all a jobs and economic opportunities industry, of which, of course, skills is a very critical input parameter into the job.
Well said.
It's like an artisan who knows what he or she can produce, and that's the skill that is getting translated into
exactly.
economic opportunity.
And in that context, if the artisan has produced something but there's no market for that,
absolutely,
that skill has no value.
Right.
One question every young entrepreneur should ask before raising capital:
do I need capital at all? Having been through the journey, sometimes I wonder, we run too much behind capital rather than figuring out how will I make my model work, and if that works, capital will follow.
Yeah.
Value over valuation, in other words.
Yeah.
I think treating capital itself as a resource and putting constraints gets you to do
exactly
a lot more. Because I remember a story of Deepak at Zomato.
Mm-hmm.
He mentioned something very interesting and that stayed with me. He said that he was running towards the last, few, probably $100,000. And then he called Sanjeev Bikhchandani then, and he asked Sanjeev, can I get $5 million to figure out a few things? And Sanjeev said, if you couldn't figure out till now, you won't figure out with $5 million too. and I think that story just stayed with me, probably that capital at times, an abundance of capital just makes you more lazy and probably not sharp enough. So.
And on the other hand, constraints actually are good triggers for innovation.
100%. And the other point is, I think a lot of entrepreneurs also believe raising capital is success.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's what gets celebrated.
Exactly. So, sometimes typical conversations, entrepreneurs, so what do you do? Oh, I do X and I just raised $1 million, right? But immaterial whether your business will do well or not.
Absolutely. Awesome. That was a wonderful rapid fire. I think it sets the stage perfectly for a more detailed conversation.
Okay.
You followed what many would call a classic Indian success path. Engineering, MBA.
The Bemba model.
And corporate roles. At what point did you first sense that this path might not be fully defining you? That's part one of the question. And was that process gradual? Or was there a specific trigger that made you rethink your path?
I think, post my engineering and did a usual 1.5 years, 2 years of work at Wipro and Infosys, which was very inspirational places, still very entrepreneurial those days, early stages of the journey. And then the MBA stint, and then a year and a half in Tokyo selling software to Japanese. But when I came back to Bangalore in 2000, something had changed. Since 97 to 2000, that there was at least in the circles and very small circles, there was still a lot of the entrepreneurial energy, .com, people were imagining stuff. And somewhere I felt that, listen, this energy is so infectious and you obviously don't find it in the corporate world. I said, I want to be a part of this energy, right? I want to feel this. And that's how that 𝗬𝗲𝗿 or the itch to say, I also want to do something. With no clue whatsoever on what to do. It was just that mahol and the energy of the place that kind of got you thinking that if I don't do it now, maybe I'll miss the bus.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was a trigger for you to go down the entrepreneurial path.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think the reflection also is that when you're surrounded by people who are doing things differently, you have role models.
Yeah.
Right. I still remember meeting a friend who had again raised some money for us. That time was, somebody has given you money for your idea, was a big deal.
That was like a sign of validation.
Validation, right? and swanky office and a nice receptionist and all that stuff. Reception, entry, conference rooms. And you say, hey, if this joker can do it, why can't I do it? Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure lots of folks have looked at me and said, hey, if this joker can do it, why can't I do it? And I think that's the beauty of the ecosystem.
Awesome.
Yep.
Now, I think the other interesting thing I picked about was your stint in Japan. that seem to be both professionally formative and personally isolating. I think you described yourself as a complete misfit there in Japan, vegetarian in the land of sushis,
teetotaler in the land of sakes,
limited language skills. I think everything that probably can throw a challenge at you, you lived in that challenging environment. And I think in a place like that, and you were selling software, right? So I think one is, what was the internal hardest adjustment you had to do while selling software in Tokyo? And I think also there was a shift in your pitch because, of course, Japanese, a lot of them don't understand English. Second, they take pride in speaking in Japanese. And I think instead of saying that, do you know English, you move to, do you want to learn English?
Exactly.
And I think that was a very fascinating thing. I think, what does that reflect about reframing the problem versus and pushing the solution?
I think you framed it well, in the sense that what Japan taught me was three things. One is that that you got to learn the language or the pain of the customer, right? And you got to put your foot in. You got to be in the play, right? I mean, if you don't get meetings, all I had was a dusty old dictionary. Remember, this is 2000, where there was no Google, no search engines, no LinkedIn or whatever, right? So how do you get your first meeting? And that was the trigger for me to say, listen, if I'm trying to sell what I have, but what they need is conversation.
Yes.
Let me go with the conversation and see what doors open, right? At least you put your foot through the door, right? And you got you in there. The second thing was that understanding cultural nuances is very critical, right? I mean, we all come with our own...
And building trust.
Trust. I still remember a client whom I used to go meet like 100 miles out of Tokyo. And I remember the first meeting, he said, you had to come and meet me 12 times every month.
Wow.
Right? First 6, don't talk business, you teach me English.
Yeah.
Next 3 months or 4 months, I will understand you. And then I will tell you about my business.
Yeah.
Right? And I routinely made that journey diligently every month. And that's where I realized that relationship building and trust is more critical.
Absolutely.
Right? And third, of course, I mean, software itself was very new. We were barely a handful of folks, the Indian software guys trying to sell software to the Japanese. And the Japanese conceptualization of the product was very different. Right? So how do you take a new thing as outsourcing and sell it in a very, very conservative country like Japan? Lots of learning.
And they take a lot of time to take a decision, but very well thought and rounded decision.
Exactly. And the beauty of it was the organization that I was working with, a very entrepreneurial thing, except that I didn't have to raise money. Every month I used to call our CFO and say, hey, can you wire some X $1,000 this month? And it used to be done, but everything else was entrepreneurial. I mean, I hired my own boss, a Japanese gentleman. I had to set up the office, figure out where to go get the next sale from. So I think that set a perfect...
Did that also lay foundation for what you're doing now in terms of getting into, let's say, rural places? And I'm sure the local culture is different.
Exactly.
And the language, their ideas, their values, beliefs, and the product market fit from an MBA standpoint, right? Japan taught you that, maybe villages also are teaching you that.
No, that's very true, because even those days, a lot of friends from other parts of the world used to say, so how are you managing them? I said, it's no different, right? If I travel 200 kilometers outside of Bangalore into Tamil Nadu, I'm in a state where I don't understand the language. I can't read the language, right? And the culture is very different.
Right.
I think what it is, as you said, it laid the foundation for was that finally, two things. One, people are people, right? End of the day, we are all motivated by the same goodness and the heart. The wrappers may be different. If you can figure a way to pierce through the wrappers and get to the core, cultural nuances apart, I think there is goodness and people wanting to do good everywhere. How do you connect to that?
Right.
In many ways also, that's the soul of India. You connect with people and you trust people to do a business with them. Transaction does not come without trust, right?
Exactly.
And I think probably Japanese share a similar value systems in many ways as Indian stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So we'll shift gears into Meritrack, and I think that's the first time we met. One of our first partnerships at KNOLSKAPE was with Meritrack. So the idea around Merit Track emerged apparently not from a single insight, but a series of patterns that you observed, right? HR problems and industry reports. In fact, one of the founders had an HR or assessment background back then, right? So how do you personally distinguish between signal and noise, right? You're hearing a lot of stories, patterns, data, but how do you piece all of that together to say, yeah, there is a problem here? And how did the outsider status, did that influence your thinking? Were you looking at the problem from fresher eyes? Did that lead to the success that Merit Track enjoyed?
Yeah, so again, the two questions. I believe what I've learned over the years is the entrepreneurial opportunity lies in doing two things. One is to figure the dots out.
Yeah.
Right. So when I started stumbling onto this idea of assessments,
yeah.
Fortunately, in a span of 3 months, 3-4 dots popped up, which stayed in your mind. Right. The industry report, the McKinsey had predicted that India IT BPO industry will add 1 million people.
Yeah.
Right. A friend of mine telling me that, listen, there's a company that wants to build a question bank management software company, software platform. HR friend at Infi who said, listen, this is a pain. Every week I have to recruit 50 people, and to do that I have to see 1,000 people, and it's a... So you see these dots.
Yeah.
Now, one is to see the dots. The other, I think the more critical skill is to connect the dots in a way that makes sense for you.
Yeah.
So we could have connected the dots to a training entity, which is what many people did. We could have connected the dots to a job board, which is what Naukri did.
Yeah.
Right? But we saw a different set of connection to say maybe there's a connection to paint the picture as an assessment entity.
Right.
So even now for every entrepreneur, I think the critical skill is what is the picture you want to paint on a canvas where you're seeing these, as you said, signals and noise, and frankly you won't be able to distinguish between, but you can also take something which is not a signal and amplify it to a signal. Assessment, we were the first guys to get off the block.
Okay.
Right? Nobody even told us that, hey, we're looking for an assessment company.
Right.
But we picked all the signals and crafted into an assessment entity.
Right.
And to a large extent, our outsider tag, to my mind, played well. Because if I had known all the perils and the challenges of assessments, sometimes it's better to stay foolish.
Right.
Or ignorant.
Yeah.
Right. And many times me and my co-founders, Murli Mohan, we keep thinking that how naive we were to say, oh, all it is a bunch of questions on a paper. We'll apply some logic and we'll make it better. But I think the outsider tag played well because many HR folks that we met, friends, said, oh, what are you dreaming of is stupid, nobody is. And I said, precisely why we are thinking about it, can you give us a chance?
Yeah.
Right? And we learned hard, we learned fast.
Right. When the odds of success when it comes to entrepreneurship is so low, I think it's important to be foolish as well sometimes, right? Go in with some faith, but the map is important.
The map is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every conversation for us validated or said this data point is not valid.
Right.
Right. So constantly in your mind, you're playing out the map.
Right.
And saying, does this conversation add or does it give me something else to work on?
Right. Sure.
No, awesome. And I think, if I remember, Merit Track was profitable from the year one.
Yeah, because the concept of, of course, there was this early stage investing.
But yet, I think later investments pushed it into the red.
Yes. And,
so December 2001, I think was a near-death experience for you.
Yeah.
Zero revenue, 15 days of cash, post 9/11 freeze, and I think if you reflect upon what went through your mind at that point in time, it's almost 24 years, right? What was the dominant emotion at that moment? Was it fear, responsibility, or stubborn hope that, we will come out of it?
It was a combination of all of this, and as entrepreneurs, we live that even to the day, right? Come month end, you're having palpitations. You're having palpitations. Where will I get the cash flows to pay salary? Where will I get the money to grow? Where does growth come from? I think, again, we were very raw as entrepreneurs then, right? We were just off the block. The overriding emotion that I felt was that, in a way, hopelessness, right? To say, who will I turn to? ecosystem itself was so small, right? How will I get out of this? Or should we even get out of this? Is it easy to call quits and go into a safe job?
But what did that phase teach you about the difference between building a business versus building a venture-backed company?
I think what it taught us was the power of conviction and belief, right? So, as it happens and that's why I'm so beholden to 𝗏, that I went to a 𝗏 meeting and this hopelessness that I was talking about, saying who's there. All it required was a person who was sitting next to me to put his hands on my shoulder and say, this happens. This is normal in entrepreneurship. Tell me about your idea. And 5 minutes I had a conversation. It looks like a great idea. Why are you giving up so early? And if you need any help, we are all here. That changed my whole, conviction, and in the sense that there are people who are going, we are not alone.
And many people have fought through these
and why should we give up so early, right? Yeah. And the moment you had that conviction and belief that lage rehna hai, we have to be at it, the team galvanized. We had a 15-member team, and when we went and said, listen, from tomorrow onwards, there's no salaries. We have to earn our rupee, right? Yeah. And whoever stays, we will make sure that if at all there's a better tomorrow, you will be a part of it. If not, thank you very much, right? All of them stayed back. And the laser focus on business, I still remember the yellow pages, 15 people, we had allocated alphabets to each one and said, today you have to cover A. Yeah. All the names in A which had any inkling of a corporate, you had to call and say, we are offering this service, can you help us?
Yeah.
Right? And of all the things, I had got the R and some non-discriminated company in back and beyond of Whitefield those days, which Whitefield didn't exist. They said, oh, we are looking to hire some polytechnic students, can you help us? And we just grabbed that with both hands. All of us ran. In fact, the first meeting, we had more people on our side than candidates on their side.
I think that reminds me of a conversation I had that if there's one important quality everybody should be taught, is the grit.
Yeah.
Because I think that never comes from any curriculum. That's something that
exactly
one needs to learn. And I think moments like these are nothing but the grit, right? That we will be at it.
Correct. And it galvanizes a team after having gone through that experience. They know how to work through adversity.
Exactly. And that truly built the culture for the next phase of growth for the next 8-10 years, right? Everybody was laser focused on, let's get customers, let's stay, let's make sure that we don't lose money.
Yeah. Right. And those are the foundations of any good business.
Exactly. Awesome. And let's deliver the value to the customer.
Right. So now shifting gears again. So post Merit-Track, now this is about Held High Foundation. How did that transition firstly happen? What was going on in your mind? You were working with corporate India up until then. How did this shift come about? So that's the first question I have. And also the mission is bold, right? What you're pursuing here, to eradicate rural poverty in a world of abundance.
Right.
That's a very powerful statement right there. And in that context, the shift from individual training to a place-based model. That's exciting. That's pretty insightful. So why do ecosystem level interventions matter more than isolated success stories? What have you learned about ecosystems? And the MARG tool that you've created and personalized poverty elimination plans, they suggest a deeply data-driven approach. So you seem to be bringing your corporate data-oriented approach to the rural space, which requires a lot of new understanding, empathy, and so on. I've packed a lot in this question, but let's start from the transition.
Yeah. It is like peeling the layers of the onion, right? That you peel one layer and you realize there's another layer. So what the transition that I started out with was a simple belief. Of course, Merit-Track, merged into Manipal. Stayed for several years there, and I realized that, listen, there is something missing for me personally, that when you're building the business and stuff like that, because Merit-Track had engaged with youth from 400-500 cities, and we had seen phenomenal stories of a student from Bihar coming and joining Infi and then going to go to the US. I mean, that changed the fortune of the family dramatically within a matter of a couple of years. And many times it happened because we were there in Patna doing the exam and doing the talent assessments and telling that here is talent that's available. So the first thought in my mind was, if talent is so widespread, why aren't there enough, why is still there poverty where people say I don't have jobs? Two, around that time when I met my co-founders at 𝗕𝗟𝗏𝗏 who were trying to do a rural experiment in BPO, setting up a BPO in Koppal, and we were able to see that you can literally take a low educated illiterate village youth but to a 1,000-hour intense immersion. You can transform that person to be an English speaking digital illiterate professional was mind-blowing to say the least. It kind of dispelled every construct I had about employability. Why I'm saying that is I truly think that there is something special in everybody. But Professor Mohammed Yunus said it beautifully. He says a lot of us die without knowing what treasures lie within. Right? So I think the objective of our education and the skill system is to bring that treasures up. And to make sure that people are able to see that, hey, first of all, forget people, we are able to see for ourselves. Right? So that was an aha moment for me to say that if this is the potential in everybody, then we must be stupid to say you're good or you're not good. Right? How can everybody live to their fullest potential? And that became for me a very compelling idea to say that if you can unleash that potential in everybody, then imagine what the world can be. And that's how the 𝗕𝗟𝗏𝗏 Foundation was started. And our realization was it was just not skills, it's much more fundamental than that. It's about dignity. And an initial conversation really helped me frame that. You know, there was again an 80-year-old who had come from Raichur, and he had got a job with Cafe Coffee Day, and he was a 4th standard dropout. So before joining Coffee Day in Bangalore, he had come to meet me. And I asked him, so what's been the biggest change in your life? And I was obviously expecting to say, listen, I come from nothing and today I'm joining a job that pays me 10 or 12,000 rupees. But he said something very interesting. He said, this happened 2-3 days before he met me. He said, I used to go to a chai shop in my town, and the tea shop owner used to treat me very shabbily earlier. He used to literally swat me away like a fly, get lost and, don't come here. And he says, this time I went in a tie, wearing a tucked in shirt, shoes, polished. And he says, I told him in English, sir, I want a tea. He said, he took out his towel, wiped the seat and said, sir, please sit, I'll get you chai. He said, he didn't recognize me. He says, that made me feel good. It's about dignity, right? Jobs, everything is all about dignity, right? So for me, that thing was what we are unlocking is the ability of an individual to live life with dignity. And the moment you're confident about yourself, the world rallies around your confidence. And that's why where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, struck a chord. To say, all of us must be empowering people to lead lives with their head held high. Right? And then, it's a much different world altogether.
Yeah, it's a powerful story. And I've heard you say that you don't like the word livelihood. You replace it with dignity is actually what people want.
Exactly. Because, how many times have any one of us gone and told an Accenture or an IBM, I'm looking for a livelihood? Right? We're looking for careers. We want the dignity. Right?
Livelihood
we want the
is
position.
more around sustenance. You just don't want to be at the level of sustenance.
Exactly. And that's where the abundance mindset comes into play. That why should we say, listen, for you, sustenance is good enough. Right? But for us, hey, we're looking for careers. We're looking for growth. We're looking for that bungalow, car, whatever.
And humans are motivated through aspirations. So if
100%.
If I don't see that, what more I can do? I mean, what do you wake up and run for? So.
And which is where I think many of the policies that we design are speaking not to the aspirations of people. I'm not saying, I'm not saying livelihoods are bad. I'm saying it is not the end condition. It is the starting point.
A very classic thing that comes to my mind is about 10 years back. When the current government started to give LPG cylinders to everyone. I think that was an aspiration to many people in rural because you were getting out of your wood and charcoal But then people said, I got a cylinder, now where is the free refill? and now people say, that's all done. Now what else?
What next?
So power, and now power means 24 hours power, and then 16 hours is not good enough. And I think that's happening across, like, be it democracy, the society expects.
And that's how progress happens, right? One aspiration at a time.
Exactly. So this whole aspect about listening to aspirations, the rural-urban divide that we were talking about, many times I feel that, the divide is because we feel that, listen, rural, somehow you got to get something going, but don't worry about aspirations, the livelihoods equivalent. But I've seen aspirations far more powerful. There, the hunger to achieve those aspirations is also as powerful.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things I read was recently the surge in the e-commerce volume is powered by the rural, because they want the same brands and products that their stores in the neighborhood are not keeping it, but they want to use it.
Exactly.
So they go online.
Exactly. And there is consumption, there is spending power.
Absolutely.
That's why you're saying there's no poor village or poor town.
Yes.
Yeah. There is abundance.
Yes, there is abundance. Of course, they will demand value.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And all of us do. Right?
I think the poor is more from the mindset. But
it's more the mindset.
Yeah. But I think there's another interesting thing. Your experience showed that, I think before OneBridge took shape, you made a serious attempt to run the rural BPO model. I think the whole idea of bringing jobs to villages was widely being promoted as the way to bring jobs to village, reduce the migration of folks from the rural to the urban centers. I think it was a great idea, but still I think it collapsed, if I recall, because of all the unforgiving constraints, high power cuts, I think unreliable internet, basic infrastructure issues, right? And I think that could not just take off this whole centralized office-based model as you had envisaged. I think learning again, and all of us learn from our failures a lot more than success, and that's why I'm just getting back into this question. How did this failure directly influence the whole core design philosophy of OneBridge, particularly your shift away from centralized infrastructure, your emphasis on last mile delivery, and your decision to build a model that works with existing rural constraint rather than trying to just overcome them?
Correct. And I think the way you defined failure is very important for me, that in any entrepreneurial journey, failure is a feature, not a bug. We are throwing a variety of darts. We are trying to figure the dots. We are trying to connect the dots. We are collaborating with people. It is but natural that things will not work.
Absolutely.
Right? And I don't even want to call it as a failure because it's a very heavy word. But if you were to say that, what did I learn from this?
Yeah.
And what learning did I incorporate into my next thing, where I learned something more? And the process of learning continues even now, right? Connecting to the question that you were asking, see, I think, take the BPO, take the training program, or the rural commerce that we built for several years, and the last mile e-commerce, all of them have been helping me learn and peel various layers. Layer 1, there is infinite potential in everybody, right? Layer 2, economic opportunities is the single most critical challenge that we need to fix. Because if you can't engage that potential fully, what is the use of that potential? And people need money, right? And the dignity that comes along with it. Third, you just can't import jobs in, which is what we were trying to do in a BPO. It's not scalable, right? 2 years in the journey, I had built a 200-seater, 4 locations, 50, 60 seats each. And I was thinking, how will it ever grow to 1 million? Because in India, if you're not solving for population scale, somebody said beautifully that India is a graveyard of successful pilots.
Well said.
Right? We would have done a lot of pilots saying this is successful, but it's not population scale. Right? And that's what pushed me to say, listen, if you can't think of a model that can go to 1 million people, it's not worth pursuing.
I call it live, but not alive.
Yeah, exactly. Correct. Yeah. So that, and the last part is, if you have to think population scale, you cannot be in those 700 districts by yourself. You have to bring in the ecosystem.
Yes.
Right? And it has to have local ownership. And to have local ownership, it has to have local relevance. So unless and until you design a model that is relevant to that local context, people are owning it up. and you are just adding some fuel to the fire, then it will happen, right? So it is these, I mean, it's been what now, 13 years since I moved out in 2012-13 from merit track into this, and every year is still a learning. We continue to learn. OneBridge itself, we've been through so much of learnings about trying multiple angles of combinations of connecting the dots, what works, what does not work. Of course, still a lot of work in progress.
And what are some accomplishments in these 13 years when you look back, and maybe you had a certain idea, the map, when you started out, and now looking back, what are some things that have yielded successful results?
I think, 𝗪𝗏𝗿 itself, we've touched over about 500,000 families, right? Through the 𝗪𝗏𝗁, through the assessment of rural poverty and finding out pathways for them. About 150-200,000 youth we've impacted by finding them jobs, setting up in micro-entrepreneurs. For me, my only metric at the end of the day when I hit the bed is, have you been able to spread that smiles and cheer to X number of families? That day is well spent, right? So, and the numbers will happen. But in that process, I think for me, the satisfaction is that you built a large ecosystem of collaborators and partners, right? Be it through the Global Action on Poverty or through 𝗪𝗏𝗿. We worked with N number of partners, aligned to various common goals, right? Because I don't think there's anything as an individual that you can accomplish. You can only do when you come together. And for me, the satisfaction of having brought a lot of people together on common goals.
And talking about some numbers as well on this, I think you coined a term called Rubens.
Yeah, Rubens and 𝗪𝗏𝗿.
𝗪𝗏𝗿, which is like 300 million odd people. That's like almost the size of the US. All put together.
Yeah.
And you're also talking about 100 million jobs to be created.
Correct.
So we'll probably shift to that and see maybe the impact of AI, which is just around the corner in many places. It has become mainstream. So one of the issues that we are tracking through our conversations is the data that is used to train AI, right? Most of this data tends to come from the West, from the English language. A lot of indigenous wisdom gets lost in the process.
100%.
The other day, I was looking up something on Siddha medicine, which is very unique to South India. Their wisdom is locked up in small towns. It is not in English. And if you go to ChatGPT, ask a question around some thing, you will get distorted answers, right? So how do you think this data justice, when building AI for India, how do we basically get the data that we need and what gets used to train the model? And the other thing around jobs as well, the other part of this equation is where firstly technology displaces labor, but over time jobs get created. What is your outlook for AI, especially when it comes to rural India?
So Rajiv, from last 1 year we've been working on this, and that's how I think every conversation that I've having is somewhere seems to put AI at the center and people around it, right? And therefore we are saying, what can people do for AI? And I realize that is the wrong way to look at it, right? You got to put people at the center and put AI around to say, how can AI enable people to find jobs, to improve lives, livelihoods, or whatever? And therefore the construct of 𝗪𝗏𝗿, saying it's not Gen AI that India needs more of, but 𝗪𝗏𝗿, that how do you make AI work for people, right? The way I see it is, end of the day, AI is a tool, right? Of course, a far powerful tool than what we have ever encountered in the past. But I think we as people must make the choice, how will I use this tool? How will I use this tool to create more jobs? How will I use this tool to create economic prosperity and abundance for people who don't have it, right? Not just another morphed photo and says, oh, you look like 𝗪𝗏𝗿 or whatever, right? Fine, that is okay. But has it helped put 1,000 rupees in the hands of a farmer? Has it helped a rural women artisan get 10 more customers, right? Has it helped a local SME access faster credit? Right?
Health, education, all
exactly,
name it, I think.
Exactly.
Agri outputs, access to markets. I think
everything.
We have millions
hundreds of problems to be solved, and
absolutely.
AI can provide a beautiful answer to that, rather than chasing something else.
Yeah.
The second realization was, when we talk of India GDP, to me that has no meaning. India is 700 districts. It is the amalgamation and aggregation of the 700 district GDP that is fueling the nation's GDP. Of course, barring some parts of what we do as a nation, right? Again, to give you an example, I'm sure you would have been to Mysore en route. You'll hit a district called Mandya, and I use this example often because it rhymes with India, right? But Mandya is about 25 lakh people. Take a wild guess on the district GDP of Mandya. If you were to take some number.
20 million, 25 million.
Okay.
50
million.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Mandya's GDP as per Karnataka Economic Census Report of 23-24 was $8 billion.
8 billion?
8 billion.
Okay.
You're
way off.
Wow.
55,000 crores. Mandya's GDP in 2016 was 24,000 crores. So it's doubled, more than doubled in 8 years. Nothing special about Mandya. Of course, it's a prosperous district, 25 lakh people. You do the math for 2.1 lakh per capita into 25 lakhs, you get 53,000 crores, right? The beauty that boggles my mind is, in the next 5 years or 7 years, if it's going to double again, Mandya itself will be a 100,000 crore economy, right? Imagine the power that you can use a tool like AI to bring more efficiency to that 50,000 crores that is being added.
Yeah.
Right? Can that 50,000 crores being added, can it grow to 60,000 crores? And two, if 60 to 70,000 crores of economic value is being added at a district level, and this is true, same order of magnitude across all the districts, imagine the entrepreneurial opportunities.
Yeah.
Right? We pat ourselves in the back at India to have created 100, 150, whatever the number is, unicorns. I argue that when there's a 60,000 crore being added at the district level, you can create 10 unicorns in that district.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? To me, that is the power. And when you talk about data, Mandya is concerned, if I were to just look at it as a country, as a bordered state, all that matters is how are people in Mandya able to use AI better?
Yeah.
Can it help predict better weather patterns across Mandya, right? And therefore, the data has to be local, right? And when you think of small language models, we don't need the LLMs and we don't need the GPUs and the energy guzzling centers, right? You can actually do a lot with small compute power at a local level. So my sense is, I think India has got to play to its strength. We should not be chasing how many new foundational models can we create. Of course, we need some of it. Nor how many GPUs have we deployed. What is our strength? Our strength lies in our districts and the youth that we have. How do we leverage AI to unleash that power?
I think I've been thinking for decades now. If you look at our overall India's employment, imagination has been dominated relatively by a very narrow idea of progress. Large companies, large factories, large employers, white collar workforce, urban and metros being the catalyst of growth. You gave example of Mandya, and sitting here in Bengaluru, Mandya is, I guess, just about 70-80 kilometers from here.
Yeah.
But I think people still come into bigger cities, and bigger cities are just becoming more crowded, and more unlivable, so as to say. I think through this global alliance of mass entrepreneurship game, I think you are arguing exactly for a very different thesis, right? That India's employment challenges cannot be solved by these gigafactories, large employers, because they'll continue to become more efficient.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they'll require fewer and fewer people to generate higher economic output. But I think the real game is about creating millions of small and micro entrepreneurs. Even if each entrepreneur creates 5, 10, 15, 20 jobs, I think that is a solution to creating 150 million people to live with dignity in this, rather than hoping for government and large corporates to keep creating. I think, and probably there's also a departure from how policymakers access to capital and finance to these micro and small enterprises in a very formal way in which they can access capital, or even for the way our education, skill, the whole ecosystem is designed to train people Not to say I want to be with one MNC company. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yes.
But I think why can't I go and create something and be, right at the helm of something like that? I think the question as we think about some of this is largely, why do you believe that the whole entrepreneurship, which is 5 to 10 million enterprises creating 150 million quality jobs, is not just an alternate path, but probably the only credible path for a country like ours to create viable economic opportunity?
These are exactly the thoughts that got us to get started out on GAME. And again, 6 years, we are still digging, finding answers. But I think the belief is very clear, as you rightly said. See, today, if you look at as we speak now, maybe there are 500 million people who are out there looking for work or working.
Yeah.
The formal employment that you talked about, where they have a job, which is just not a salary but comes with a social security benefit, etc., is less than 10%. Even if India grows fast and the number grows to 20%, assume 150 million people entering the workforce the next 15 years, 20% of them being absorbed, which still leaves us with 120 million people who come with that education, come with that hunger, that aspirations, but where do they find jobs? And economic opportunity. Secondly, as you said, migrating to the top 10, 20 cities is not an answer anymore.
Absolutely.
We are seeing the horrors of it. Here, it's bad for everybody.
Our urban infrastructure everywhere is crumbling.
And nowhere, it cannot
take
take
this quality index to all the metrics that
it cannot take the onslaught, right? So the second thesis is you have to create jobs where they are at the district level, right? A migration within maybe 100-kilometer radius is still okay.
Yeah.
Not people traveling from Odisha to come into Bangalore or Trivandrum, right? Third, that if that 120 million youth have to get absorbed, and it has to happen locally, and it has to be a good quality job, the only plausible answer to that is you have to have job creators in those districts, and it cannot be the government and the large corporations.
Absolutely.
Right? And the data so far about our MSME sector speaks otherwise. 70 million registered enterprises employing 111 million people, which is an average of 1.3 or 1.4 per venture or enterprise.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the challenge. 97% of our enterprises are sub 3 people. Why is there a stunting? Why are they not able to break that? 3-4 reasons that you talked about. Entrepreneurial mindsets. Many of them are not even recognizing themselves as entrepreneurs. They say, I'm doing this because I have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Right? 2, how do they think about growth? So we call it as the seed, soil and climate. Seed is what's in your mind, right? Can you change that right from early childhood? That's what my partner Makin does through 𝗲𝗺𝗏, right? How can you inculcate entrepreneurial mindsets in early, like a mathematical ability, right? 2, can you then create a soil that nurtures the seed to grow? Which is where a collaborative, cooperative ecosystem comes into play, right? Are the bankers, are the local district officials, are other entrepreneurs supporting this seed to sprout?
Yes.
And third, the climate is, are there favorable policies for them? Does it make it easier for them to access capital, access markets, access talent, right?
Yeah.
Not be burdened by 1100 laws that jail you in case you don't file your returns.
No, absolutely. And even if they get access to a market where they can produce and sell and find or service, I think today with much better internet connectivity, roads and infrastructure and airport, probably India is better connected than ever before, right? So this, I mean, for many reasons, you don't have to be large cities only.
Exactly. And that's been the reason for our growth as well the last 8-10 years, right? I mean, the 7-8% growth we're seeing is because of all of these factors coming together.
I like the way you also phrase this, right? From a survival entrepreneur to an opportunity-based entrepreneur. Most entrepreneurs that you're talking about,
what we call as necessity entrepreneurs, but you have to move to an opportunity entrepreneur.
Right. Like the local shopkeeper is also an entrepreneur in his own way.
Exactly.
But he probably doesn't think of it that way.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, but I think the big change here is you are still having a lot of self-employed people, but they are not translating from being a self-employed to a job creator.
Right, exactly.
So I think that
switch is important.
Yeah, but I think as we talk about it in terms of what assumptions about scale, productivity and risk does this force us to unlearn?
See, the whole aspect about, you alluded to that small is beautiful. See, if I'm in a village with 1,000 families, right? And if each family take a per ab has 5 people, right? You take a 10,000 or 5,000 pop village, each spending about 2 lakhs. That's 10 crores of spend happening there in that village.
Right. Yeah.
Not a small number. But if I'm a small kirana store and my revenue is only 3 lakhs, or I'm earning 15,000-20,000 rupees, why can't this grow up? Why should a household in a village travel to a taluk to find something when you can actually provision it in the village? And why that something that you are finding in the taluk be manufactured 100 kilometers or 300 kilometers away? So it comes down to, I think, questioning every assumption we are making about economies of scale, etc., and making choices that will enable local economies. And this is exactly what Gandhiji's thought about Gram Swaraj was, that how can you make every village or every cluster self-reliant and self-resilient, right? 𝗲𝗵𝗵𝗁, who's been a fascinating leader in the thing, she talked about 100-mile communities, saying all the basic necessities of life, education, water, food, clothing, shelter, financial services and energy, how can you provision that within a 100-mile radius?
Yes.
Right?
That's a decentralized model.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that is what we need to think about, because mostly our thoughts are centralized, then moves to decentralized, and I'm saying take it to the next level of distributed in a network model,
right,
rather than a command control structure model.
Right.
I think something very interesting, Elon recently said in one of the shows, that the success is when you produce more than what you consume, exactly. Right? Be it at village level or community or enterprise, are we creating more value than what
give more than you take? Yeah,
absolutely. That naturally leads to abundance, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. So just want to go back to AI. So through 𝗀𝗲, and you spoke about what the basic philosophy there. So we've been tracking this AI story mostly from an India AI perspective, comparing India's approach to AI vis-a-vis what's happening in the US and China and so on. So when we just peel the onion when it comes to AI, there is data,
right?
There is compute, there are use cases,
correct,
right? And there are of course models, right? It's a 5-layer cake, as Jensen Huang says, with energy being at the bottom of that. So you spoke about how India should focus on the use cases that are local, right? Nobody's going to solve it for them. It has to be sort of locally done, right? How do you envision that happening, right? Especially from skilling standpoint, people need to be trained on this new technology coming in, right? How do you envision the rollout actually to happen?
That 5-layer cake. I think there's a very, especially from an India rural context, there's a very critical 6th layer, which is trust.
Yeah.
Right? For years, there have been many scams that have been done, and we are all seeing what's happening on the whole cyber crimes.
Right.
The explosion that has happened over the last couple of years, and AI will make it only worse.
Yeah.
Right? So imagine yourself as a farmer in a village, right? And you are somewhere aware of AI. You want to use an AI tool.
Yeah.
To improve productivity in your cotton farm.
Yeah.
How do you do that? You can't just go online and say, you know what, I'll just download an app off a Google Play Store and I'll use it, because you don't know whether that app is going to scam you the next minute,
right,
and wipe out your bank savings, right? So what I believe is that every village or every cluster must have a trusted network of AI entrepreneurs. So I'm calling this as a 𝗀𝗲𝗿 cafe, where there's an entrepreneur. So again, to give you an example, telecom got democratized through PCOs. There was an entrepreneur who used to say, hey, come, I'll help you make a call, because none of us had phones in our homes.
Right.
Internet got democratized through internet centers.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody said
cafes,
cyber cafes. Right? So I'm envisaging that AI should get democratized through a 𝗀𝗲𝗿 cafe.
Yeah.
A model where people can come in, you as a farmer can walk into the cafe. If I'm the entrepreneur, you'll say, hey, I'm a farmer, cotton, what do you suggest? And you'll say, listen, I think this app is curated, will work for you. I'll help you implement it. If there's any support, you come to me.
Yeah.
And you give me the data that you're giving so that I can make the engine better.
Yeah.
Right? That layer, if you don't solve for, it will go in different directions. So what I am envisaging through this whole 𝗀𝗲𝗿 movement is that imagine if there are 100,000 AI rural entrepreneurs who act as an interface between technology and the village consumers. And as you were saying, multiple use cases: agriculture, healthcare, commerce, shopping, whatever. And this becomes a layer. Then you are able to make those use cases work and people will earn money.
Yeah.
Along the chain, if I can go tell a farmer, listen, use this and it will save you 1,000 rupees, he'll happily part with 300, 400 rupees for that.
Yeah.
Right? That is the critical layer, apart from all of this. And if we can localize it, then that energy compute all comes down.
Right. There's almost like the gas guzzlers that the US used to produce in the 70s, and suddenly the Japanese cars came in.
Yeah.
Small is beautiful.
Correct.
And doesn't guzzle petrol, and suddenly that took off.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, you don't need those massive compute power because you're not traversing thousands of kilometers. You're traversing within a 100-kilometer radius.
Right.
Yeah. No, and I think even from Indian consumer mindset, I think Indian consumers are not frugal. They are value conscious.
Exactly.
And I think if you show the value,
there is a model.
There is a model.
𝗖𝗍𝗍𝗶 𝗀𝗏𝗏.
Yeah.
Is that sort of like a template or a playbook that can be utilized for what you're talking about?
There are lots of models. CSCs, the Common Services Centers set up by MIT, is one playbook. 𝗀𝗏𝗏 is another. OneBridge, we had set up 25,000 Kirana stores who are acting as digital ambassadors to the village. The challenge was we were unable to crack the commercial model beyond a particular level. Right? Our entrepreneurs are making 2,000-3,000 rupees a month. I was trying to push it to 10,000. Where it starts really making a difference. And I was unable to construct the stack because of too many moving parts. Today, AI can handle all those moving parts.
Got it.
Right?
I think coming towards probably the end of our conversation, I think one of the very important things, again, which you have tried to address and we all have been seeing, is that most of our today the policy, skill, program, employment interventions, they are all based on economic and demographic data. While I think data is good, but I think the human aspirations are beyond just data.
Correct.
Data doesn't capture a lot about, so while I think data can measure economic income levels, employment status, education attainment, sectoral demand, consumptions, you name it, right? Everything data, and I think through 𝘄𝗏𝗏, you're trying to reverse this lens by capturing youth voices, aspirations, fear, anxiety, motivation, treating aspiration as a soft variable. Because I think somewhere, how do you take and measure the impact of that into policy and program design? Because I think globally also we are seeing a lot of upheaval, or probably what has happened in many countries is because I think people felt that their aspirations or demands are not getting met, or they are not seeing that they are getting benefited by the overall economic output. So while it's good to say that India is growing by 8%, but someone down will say, how's it improving or my life, right? And I think that's the reality. So I think, why do you believe in this context that the aspiration data is as critical as economic data and all other data points in effective interventions?
It's been festering in my mind for several years, Rajiv. You know that this is a common conundrum we always have with HR folks, right? One hand, any HR guy you meet says, listen, I'm not getting enough talent. And on the other hand, you always have a bunch of people who says, I'm not getting the jobs. And the challenge is not demand supply. The missing link to me has been an aspirational link. So it's just not demand and supply of talent. It's also what the talent wants to do, which may not match with what the demand is, right? So, and I saw that upfront in 𝗪𝗏𝗏, where on day one, for example, I was in Lucknow, one of the slums of Lucknow, we were running a batch, and 21 girls, all of them stood up the first day and said, all I want is to do is to earn 100 rupees more per day so that I can help my family, right? So they're all coming from construction, labor families, right? The same group, 120 days later, I was there. All of them stood up with confidence and said, what do you want to be? I asked the same question. IAS officer.
Wow.
The police officer, teacher, entrepreneur. In 4 to 5 months, their entire aspirations have changed. And that happens to all of us. Every time we are exposed to something triggers in me to say, hey, why can't I do this, right? So it's not a static number, it's a flow. That's when I realized that if I had gone and offered them, here is 100 rupees that you can take, they're way past that. Yeah. Right? That's why YouGraph came up as a thought to me to say, unless and until we understand, and I called it also the YouGraph index, it's not a static number. So can you measure what their growth aspirations are, what their resiliences are, where do they fear, what is their future readiness on an ongoing basis at millions of data points, then you can influence policy to do that. So we've just done an inception report, and one clear policy indicator there is, we talk of youth as one monolith. We've, through our studies, identified 10 different personas of multiple ranges of aspirations, growth, fear, and of course demographic factors. Now, if you shape one skills program for all of them, it will not fit anybody.
Yeah.
So one insight that's coming out is you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach. You got to take each of these personas and design elements of education, skills, jobs, economic opportunities for each of them. Then only you can solve it.
Absolutely. No, I think pretty much as you said this, I realized there was a time when we had this great digital divide at workforce, in societies. Those who could, for example, in banks, I remember being part of it. Banks were pushing hard to get customers on the digital channels and not to visit a branch. But there were customers like, say, my mom, she was still very reluctant to use a mobile app or internet banking. Workforce started to feel that digital is going to take away a lot of their jobs through automation.
Correct.
I think today we have a similar anxiety around AI. Will AI impact jobs? Will it have a divide in the way the economic value transcends in the society? And these are all aspiration, fear. But the reality is we'll all live with AI. I think AI readiness as a part of our curriculum, as a part of how do we create opportunity, and how do you think today with all this happening around us and with this anxiety and human aspiration, governments are looking at this as a lens from policy making rather than just looking at the economic data and some of the other data points.
As you said, I think there are 3-4 forces, and that takes me to that 𝗪𝗵 framework, right? Yeah. 4 forces to me are critical. One is aspirations, which is what we are trying to do through YouGraph. 2 is talent, that there's infinite talent, how do you unlock that? The 3rd is the entrepreneurial spirit that is locally there. And the 4th is technology, which is AI. And to me, the core of it is dignity, right? So with AI being the technology part, I think the question that we have to ask is, how will we use AI to unlock potential, to unlock economic opportunities, to unlock entrepreneurial spirits, while maintaining and getting the dignity of the individual always on an up curve, right? So where I'm coming from is, we sometimes think of AI as an animal that has got its own path, right? I think we got to bend that arc towards what we need to achieve, and that's where I think policy plays a big role. Right?
Make it human-centric, as you
mentioned. Make it human-centric. Let us shape AI the way we want it to work for us.
Yeah. Working with AI rather than AI becoming
a demon that we think, master, exactly.
And we become the slaves
and we become the slave, right? How can we make AI the slave, the servant to meet our objectives?
Absolutely.
Yesterday we were talking to Nitin Seth of Incedo.
Right.
It was earlier with Flipkart and other companies. So he spoke about human in the loop is one model. But can we envision human above the loop?
Exactly.
Where AI does stuff for you, but human is still in control of the destiny and what problems need to be solved and so on.
Absolutely.
The powerful idea.
Yeah.
And the other thing he spoke about, which I think you are alluding to as well, is the whole idea of jobs, the way we think about it from a corporate setup. I think you mentioned at Accenture or Cognizant, you don't go and say, hey, is this about livelihood? There is a need for unlocking what he was calling as the caveman spirit. This whole idea of jobs is post-industrialization.
Exactly.
It's only 200 years old.
Correct.
But prior to that,
we've all been entrepreneurs.
So how do we tap into that spirit?
Yeah.
And that's one thing he spoke about, caveman. At the same time, how do we unlock supermen? Which is like, you have infinite potential. I think you are talking about that as well. How do you tap into that? The other thing I picked up in the context of AI is, while AI is going in this direction of artificial narrow intelligence to general to super intelligence, humans are going in the opposite direction. We are becoming narrow and we are not realizing our infinite potential. So I think what we heard yesterday from Nitin, you sort of, you're throwing in a different perspective from a rural India standpoint.
Yeah. No, I think that is the key. So what I believe is that all of us as a society have to start making clear choices now. And I think the window will close very, very fast.
Right.
If we don't wrestle with it and make those choices, then it becomes a 𝗲𝗪𝗏. I mean, it's all there. What can we do?
Yeah.
Right. So I think these conversations are super critical to.
Right. I just have one more question on jobs and democracies. I've been tracking the space as well.
Okay.
Usually in democracies, the right to get some votes is that I will create jobs for you, right? And in an environment when AI is threatening that, are dictator kind of regimes better placed in the age of AI versus democracies, which will have to wrestle with this question, right? And look at the world around us. The powerful leaders that are emerging are speaking the language of dictatorship, and they are pushing AI through. How do you see something like that?
See, sometimes it's a dangerous world. I would rather index everything on happiness and freedom, rather than only on economic choices that we need to make, right? So to an extent, I think for me, democracy is a far more valuable construct than anything else, and nothing should threaten that. With all the inefficiencies, we pride ourselves in India being still a very democratic country where I have the freedom of taking and making choices.
No, absolutely. And I think probably on that, Rajiv and we have been chatting that there is a third way, and which is what we call is the India way. There is a China-led AI and a US-led, a capital and a control. But I think more than 2/3 of the humanity lives in the world outside these two spheres. Not just a country of 1.4 billion, but I think humanizing technology for the benefit of human probably is the way which we believe is, I think, the way India can lead forward in this era. Because the same challenges exist in Global South and many parts of the world. Right?
So, and we can start creating solutions that can work anywhere else. UPI is a classic example.
Absolutely.
In fact, the India AI Summit we're very excited because it's the India AI Impact Summit. And the tagline really is for the good of all. Right? So I've been in that context arguing that can we really envision AI to be the digital 𝗪𝗏 that Gandhiji used to dream about? Right? How can you make that 𝗪𝗏 spin out economic and social good at the villages, and how do we then harness AI to be that digital 𝗪𝗏?
Absolutely. I think like we had another conversation, everybody needs a more personalized education and a coach.
Exactly.
Not possible in the current curriculum. Courts and judiciaries with the number of case pendencies, just not possible. Access to good doctors in tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 towns are just not accessible. I think there are many of these population scale problems. So I think while there are some concerns, but there is a lot of good and the opportunity. And I think we are pretty hopeful, just that we have to build it right.
We have to build it right, and we have to make those conscious choices now.
Absolutely.
Right. Madan, this has been a deeply enriching conversation. Thank you so much for your time and insights. A few takeaways for me. One, I never put dignity in the center of the equation. That's a change in my mindset. So thanks for bringing that in. And as I was listening to you speak, that dignity is not just a rural phenomenon. I see that in the urban context as well. When AI is threatening everything that's human, right? What is then the question of who am I?
What will I hold on to?
What will I hold on to? What am I uniquely capable of? What are my gifts? It's the same question that's coming in front of everybody. So that new perspective I got today, thank you so much for that. And this move from centralized monolithic model to almost using design thinking, if I may say so, right? I mean, bottoms up, creating those different segments that you spoke about. Don't look at something as a homogeneous thing. The world is never like that. Having the nuance to say, is this doing good for all? I think that starts with design thinking and grounds up approach. And if democracy, I think you spoke about the importance of that. If democracy is defined as of the people, by the people, for the people, it has to serve the people in the center, and using AI as that wheel of progress. I love that metaphor as well. Thank you so much for all the insights.
Wonderful.
No, absolutely. And I think what stands out right from your early experience of Japan, connecting on the culture, community, trust. And I think that is a softer aspect always that is so much more important but undervalued. as we are getting into the whole technology trap. I think also probably how do we become a nation of not just few large employers, but become the self-generating kind of micro-entrepreneurs, taking it to probably where people are, the opportunities, rather than people migrating for the opportunities to bigger cities. And I think something that really is so important we spoke about is how AI can be a technology that is inclusive rather than it excludes people out. So thank you for wonderful insights. We really enjoyed having this conversation.
Thank you. No, it was fantastic having these conversations. And I think, when you step out and look back in, there's a lot of learning. So learned a lot through the framings that you did. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Madan. And to those of us who are tuning into this episode, you know what to do: like, share, subscribe. And if you feel this content could be valuable to your friends, colleagues, family members, do feel free to share it. And we are having conversations pretty much every week with change makers, people who are trying to change the status quo. So we are here with a mission of clearing the blur, and hope you will support us in this journey.
Absolutely. And I think this conversation with Madan would have helped you figure out that are we designing systems around people and helping them improve the quality of life, or are we just becoming the victim of technology? So if you enjoy our show, subscribe to it and keep watching. We'll bring more conversations in the future episodes. Till then, stay curious.